Hello and welcome back to another episode of LMScast. My name is Chris Badgett, and today we have a special guest, Danny Iny from the Course Builders Laboratory. He's also the founder of Mirasee and has written an excellent book called Teach and Grow Rich. If you're an online course entrepreneur, if you're a teacher, if you're an entrepreneur, we're bringing you a really special guest today with Danny Iny. Today, we're going to get into some of the lifestyle pieces and components that come with developing your online course or your education project. And we're going to get into how to kind of stay true to your values and how those can drive you and help you get through the process of getting up and going. But first, Danny, thanks for coming on the show.
Chris, it is absolutely a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, I kind of resonate a lot with your story. We've both got young kids at home. We both care a lot about, certain values or ways we want to be in the world with, how we live, the types of people we want to surround ourselves with, the type of customers we want to work with. I've noticed that's a similarity between us in that we're very intentional about those things. Mm-hmm. So I kind of wanted to start off and focus on this values piece. Like, how do you see values? And I know it's so important to you because your company name is Mirasee. So maybe start with telling people what Mirasee is, and then let's transition that into how you approach values in your life and business.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mirasee is a coined name, which means we made it up. But if you look at the roots, mira in Latin languages means either to see or to wonder at. And to see, obviously, is to see. So it's kind of a play on wondering at what we could see, at what might be possible. Values, we all have values, and we sometimes feel like we can't have them expressed and lived out in our professional lives, right? It's like, this is how I come home and behave the way I would like my kids to see me behave when it's possible. And I think it should be all the time. I think it should be a part of your work. We were talking before we hit record, the kind of the role that work plays for a lot of people in that it is facilitative, right? You do your work to make money so that you can pay your bills. And then you can, maybe you donate some money to charity. Maybe you volunteer on the weekends. But why not create work that by its work product, by the outcomes and by the process of the way you do it, is that impact, is that expression of who you want your best self to be. I think a lot of that comes down to intentionality. And so I think that's where it all starts.
Yeah, that's really cool. Focusing on values and I mean, in my experience, it's really exhausting. And I see it around in other people in the world when you're doing something and it's not like resonating at a values level. It's just really exhausting. Whereas when you're really in your values and working with the people you like to work with and that sort of thing, the exact opposite thing happens, which is more energy starts building. You wake up excited, things like that. So, well, there's the people listening here. There's a lot of online course creators out there. There's a lot of teachers who are trying to figure out this whole online thing. There's entrepreneurs out there and all kinds of different businesses that are looking to incorporate online education either as a product in and of itself or as an add-on to train customers or to help attract new customers. And they want to know like how to stay true to their values. How do you go about it? I mean, it can be a struggle at first when you're developing your entrepreneurial project to kind of have that double life of, okay, what if I'm starting and I'm a little stuck, I don't like my job, or I want to be home more around my kids and my partner, I want more location freedom. Like, how do I begin to start to tip the scales over into bringing more values into my work or my side hustle? Like, what do I do? What's the starting point?
It's a great question. It's a hard one to answer because you kind of just start by doing it. Big change doesn't happen all at once. We just celebrated the new year, and this is the time of New Year's resolutions, which are promptly followed by Blue Monday, which is the second Monday of the month, which is when people are like, oh, it turns out I haven't stuck with any of my resolutions. It's because a lot of resolutions are about big change. This year I will go to the gym every day and I will be in bed by 7 p.m. and I will only eat vegetables and never drink alcohol and spend 4 hours reading to my kids every day. And it's like, first of all, the math doesn't work out. There are only so many hours in the day, but changing so much behavior all at once is hard. So I would kind of look at, well, what is one small thing that you can change and stick with it for a month? And then add another small thing that you can change and kind of iterate towards something better. Your goal isn't to, magically just change how life is today, because that's not how these things work. It's about iterating so that a year from now, life looks a whole lot better.
That's awesome. So lots of little wins along the way, and look at you snapping into teacher mode. One of the big things that I've learned from your material is that the difference between being a publisher and being into education. And in your words, with education, the teacher and the learner share some responsibility in the outcomes. And you talk a lot about in your book, Teach and Grow Rich, which is a fantastic read, about the downward pressure on pricing in terms of information products, whether that's books or online courses, membership sites, or whatever, that don't have that more robust educational component, which includes a lot of action. But like you mentioned, it starts with small action. Mm-hmm. And you also talk about bringing in agile development type, that type of thing, where it's an iterative process, which you're talking about right there. Start small and just start taking action in the right direction. As cliche as it sounds, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, but not necessarily with just reading a book.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's really interesting because, we live in this world of courses, building and selling courses, teaching people how to do it. And it's starting to become a lot more mainstream. I don't mean like within the world of online course creators. I'm talking about the world at large. Like if you look at a company like Masterclass, for example, it's bringing courses by Aaron Sorkin on screenwriting, Dustin Hoffman on acting, like stuff like that. That's amazing. It's going mainstream. And if you look at, you would expect that this is the top of the line information. And of course there is like $100 because it's purely information. Because, when I take Aaron Sorkin's screenwriting class, I have no connection with Aaron Sorkin. It's not like he's responsible for my success. He's not reviewing my scripts or anything. It's just information, and that's great, and that has its purpose. But what that does is, on the one hand, it opens the market. It opens people's awareness that, oh, I can take courses from experts and not universities, which is a huge thing. And then they come in, they're like, but where's the deep transformation? I need someone to supply that. And that's where the people who are watching this come into the picture.
That's awesome. Yeah, and we talk about this a lot. We call it has different names, but one of the strategies we talk about is scaling the human touch with robotics. But there's only so much that you can do in terms of automation. And you also wisely touch on this issue in the book, Teach and Grow Rich, about what advice do you have for somebody who's trying to scale that transformation, that shared responsibility in the outcomes? What are the beginning stages of that without getting locked into the one-on-one is the only way? And an obvious one that we recommend a lot is having, weekly or monthly office hours where you can have a one-to-many component, and the conversation can be adaptive to the crowd, not just, preaching to the crowd or whatever. But how else can somebody facilitate transformation and start to try to scale that?
So that is a great question, and there is a strategic answer and there's a tactical answer. Right, the tactical answer, I can talk about how, yes, you can do office hours. I have coaches that work for me that support our students, and we support them in a variety of ways, right? There's some one-on-one interaction, some office hours, a variety of these different setups. How you choose what you will do it comes down to how you conceptualize scalability, right? A lot of people think about scalability as if they're a software company, right? 1,000 more users, no big deal, right? Doesn't require any additional anything. But courses are not software, right? You're not a software company. That doesn't mean it doesn't scale. It just means it isn't going to scale like a software company. I think a much better analog is a company like Zappos, right? Great human component, great direct personal touch. And clearly they operate well at scale. You don't get acquired for billions of dollars if you're not operating at scale. What it comes down to is not about minimizing the level of support provided, but being able to provide the level of support that's really required in a way that is cost effective. Cost effective meaning profitable on a per transaction basis. So I know that for the number of students that I need, X number of coaches for, that dynamic works out so that I can make enough money to pay my coaches and still have a profit. And that means that if I need twice as many coaches because I have twice as many students, that works. So you figure out what is the support people really need, and how can I deliver that in a way that's cost effective? And as your student base scales, so does your support.
That's awesome. And just to tie that back into meaning and values, we had an earlier podcast episode with somebody named Peter Felanius, and he talked about building online learning environments on top of what he calls outlier learning, which is built on top of some social science that came out about self-determination theory. And in Peter's view, to create true meaning and transformation, both in yourself and in a learning environment, you need three components, which are team or community. You need that social interaction. And that's an interesting thing that can scale some on its own. Like in some ways, if you have a community environment, people can help each other, and that can scale a little bit. By not doing it alone and having other tutors like you're talking about is a great way to responsibly scale and not just let support get worse and worse over time. Another thing is just creating an environment of rapid learning where you get lots of little wins. And like you mentioned, the iterative process, it's all about action. It's all about doing. So, when people have activities to do, those are things that can scale. They can go out into the world and do those things and grow in that way. And then the other is just leadership, which is meaning the opportunity for people to kind of lead their own learning journey and take on responsibility, for teachers and tutors to be responsible and really foster a community of leadership. And these are things that can grow, but like you said, it's not infinitely scalable. It's
not infinitely scalable without the resources dedicated to it scaling as well.
Yeah, scaling responsibly. That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, as people get going, I've seen this working with a lot of education entrepreneurs and online course creators. Sometimes people get stuck, or they kind of lose. I don't want to say motivation, because I know they care and they're motivated, but whether it's some kind of imposter syndrome, fear of success, getting bogged down in the technical tools required, focusing on technology when they should be building community or curriculum. There's all these stumbling blocks. It's almost like a forest you're navigating through at night to try to get to the other side of launching a truly great platform. But one of the things that I think really helps motivate people, especially if they're starting from a point where they're under optimized, they're away from their family, they're not fulfilled at their work, is to know a little bit about the light on the other side of what life can be like as a online course creator. And I know I mentioned with you before this call, one of the things that I've been able to do is just spend a lot of time around my kids. It's been an important thing to me from before they were born, and it was something I intentionally planned for and built a career around. But now I get to reap those benefits. I just spent a better part of a year traveling with my family around the United States and visiting national parks and things like that, while still able to run an online course and software business. But can you tell us a little bit more about your journey and how you got into all this and help inspire people who are, if they're not stuck now, they will at some point hit some obstacles and they need to dig in and keep going?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I've definitely been through my fair share of challenges. The last attempt I made at building a big company kind of imploded on me, and I walked away from that with about $250,000 in personal debt. And so you have to do something. So I started a new business because I had bills to pay, and I started a consulting practice. And I found that there were people that needed the kind of service that I was providing, but didn't have the resources to afford it. So I was like, well, what if I create a course that would teach some of them some of that stuff? And it wasn't all at once, and it wasn't overnight, but kind of building that business and building that practice in such a way that was designed to create the lifestyle that I care about. So, very focused on building an online audience, very focused on building work that I can do from anywhere. Not that I like to travel all that much. I actually like staying home. But work that you can do from anywhere means work you don't have to drive into an office or visit clients for, right? Because you're working, in my case, from home, or an office that's across the backyard. A lot of it just comes down to, like, this is actually something that I've always been very adamant about, like refusing to commute.
Yeah.
Spending half an hour in traffic every day, it's like, that's just not a good use of time. And when you can avoid that, you appear to be so much more productive because you essentially have an extra hour or two than everyone else. And if someone watching this, you have to drive through traffic, that's a shame, and that doesn't mean you can't be successful. But you want to think about, some people don't mind it. Some people love driving and listening to audiobooks. What are the things that would be the biggest wins for you, and how can you rearrange your life to make it happen? Maybe you can negotiate to work from home 1 day a week. Maybe you can, like, how much of an income would you have to supplement? How much would you have to pare down your expenses to allow you to make that leap and start investing more, growing more, right? You want to think about how you can take those first steps. But the first step to that is, you took a year and you traveled around the US in an RV with your kids. I make a point of being present with my children as much as I can. I like working close to home. I like that I work with my wife, who's my business partner. The first step to that is having a clear picture on what that perfect day lifestyle actually is for you. I think the gap for a lot of people is they don't even really know. And the way they define their perfect day is not based on what they want, but based on what they don't want. And so you end up with a lot of very adolescent, I want to travel the world and sip Mai Tais on the beach and have my own private island. And it's not really what they want. It's just the opposite of what they have now. And so they're kind of describing their dream vacation rather than their dream life. And, vacations are great, but you ideally want to design a life that you don't urgently need a vacation from.
Absolutely. That's a really good point. Yeah. The concept of permanent retirement, sitting on a beach it's cool, but it's not really sustainable. Like, you get bored. You want to have fulfilling work. And like you mentioned, I think, which is another sometimes common misconception, is that once you achieve it, it doesn't mean you have to, like, give away all your stuff, become a minimalist, and travel the world, hopping from Airbnb to Airbnb with your family. You may just like to further stay at home and get more stuff and, visit with your friends and family that you already have. I think what that comes down to is just getting really brutally honest with yourself about the lifestyle that, is good for you, which is going to be totally different than for the next person.
Absolutely.
So what are some struggles along the way that you had to overcome as you started to, find some success teaching others? Like, what are some stumbling blocks? Did it affect your relationship, or did you get, like, too obsessed with it sometimes. And since the internet never turns off, did you have issues with boundaries, or did you have something working and then all of a sudden it stopped working? Like what did you struggle with, and what kept you going during the hard times?
And all of those things happened from time to time, right? Things that you thought were going to work didn't work. Things that did work stopped working. You find that your investment of time or energy or resources is not always ideal. You make bets that turn out to have been bad bets to make. All of those things are going to happen. And I don't think it's about avoiding those things. I think it's about recognizing them for what they are when they do happen, which is not signs that you're not on the right track, not signs that you should quit or anything like that, but just cues for you to course correct, cues for you to adjust. As an entrepreneur, a big part of your job is plan B. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Plan A didn't work. Now it's your job. Come up with plan B. And when something breaks, when something doesn't happen the way you want it to, you can see that as, oh my God, the universe is telling me I shouldn't be doing this. Or, the universe is sending up the bat signal and I'm Batman, right? This is the sign for me to step up and do my job, because, when it's business as usual, anyone can do it. And that doesn't mean your job is easy, but if you want to create a great success and be well rewarded for it, well, if it was easy, anyone could do it. But this is a job for you to do, and that's really cool. There's a quote out of the last lecture that I really like. He says that the brick walls in your path, they're not there to keep you out. They're there to keep everyone else out and to give you a chance to prove how much you want it.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the Course Builders Laboratory and what makes it different in the space, because you really focus in on the difference between being an information publisher, which is getting downward pressure on pricing and demand and things like that, versus really creating transformative educational opportunities. And like you're just talking about, in terms of the obstacles in the way, part of real learning is, you fall down sometimes. And if you're the teacher, the way I think of it as a parent is like, and as a leader in business, is it's okay, and it's actually part of the process to let people make mistakes. I just want to make sure I protect people from making unrecoverable mistakes. But could you
support them in getting back up?
Yeah.
So here's how I see the Course Builders Lab as being different from a lot of the I will teach you how to build and sell a course programs out there. First of all, the support. Every student in our program gets a dedicated coach on our team. And that doesn't mean, that you can send a question and goes to a help desk in India. It's a coach that is your coach, that knows what you're doing in your business, will give you actual feedback on what you're trying to create, because we found that's what it takes for people to be successful. We've also, rebuilt and iterated this course a number of times as we worked with more and more students. And because of that, there's a track record, right? When you look at a lot of these courses, look at their sales page. You'll typically find, 5 or 10, maybe 15 case studies or testimonials. And if you read them closely, you're like, I don't think this person actually took the course. I think they kind of worked privately with the course creator, or they're buddies with them or something. But what is there that can give me confidence that a regular person like me will be successful? We've had hundreds and hundreds of people go through this program and achieve great success. And we guarantee results. Again, unlike a lot of people in the industry. If you join this program, put in the time, do the work, you will launch your course successfully. If you don't, we will help you create a plan to get back on track. If you execute that plan and you still don't launch your course successfully, we'll give you double your money back, because clearly it didn't work. We've only had to fulfill on that guarantee, I think, 3 or 4 times out of thousands and thousands of students. The process works for the people who work it, and the infrastructure is there to support the people who want to be successful.
That's really awesome. Well, let's look at an issue in terms of the journey, in terms of getting to that aspirational lifestyle that the listener is aspiring to. I think I've heard, and it might have been quoted from a sociological experiment where after you're making somewhere around $70,000, money doesn't necessarily make you happier, um, or whatever. That may or may not be true, but let's say that in terms of timeline, like in your experience in working with lots of people, if they're starting kind of in the side hustle phase, and let's assume we're trying to get to that 70K US dollar approximate mark, and then beyond, like, what do you think is a reasonable expectation? Obviously, overnight is not how it works at all. But like, what in the journeys that you've seen from kind of zero to hero, how does it play out over time?
Typical, and obviously there's a lot of variation, but kind of the transition to full time, the part where you're making enough money from this endeavor that it can replace a full time income, that happens sometime in year 2. Right? It can be sooner. It can be in the first year. It can be later if you're, it can take as an infinite amount of time if you're not doing anything. But typical to be earning enough money for you to replace your income and go full time usually happens in year 2.
That's really cool. And then what do you see is, after kind of replacing your income to really doing well? Like, what differentiates the people who, they're inspiring to, like, okay, I made it. I escaped my job, or I replaced my income, and I'm doing my own thing. I'm in alignment with my values. Awesome. How are people, do some people just stay there, and then some people be like, all right, let's see how far we can go and see how
absolutely. Yeah. It'll really get into 2 camps, and it comes down to what your ambitions are. Right. Something that I've learned, we just closed the year just under $4 million last year. Something that I've learned over the last few years is that it's a lot of work to grow a business. It's not a lot of work to keep a business more or less the same size that it's at. So any given year, and I face this choice every year. It's like, I could probably work 4 months out of the coming year, and we'll do, in the range of $4 million again. Or I can put in all the hours I'm going to put in because I see us growing a lot bigger, right? Everyone decides for themselves, like, at what point are they like, you know what, this is as big as I want to go. I'm happy with this. I want to invest my energies elsewhere, versus this is where I want to invest my energies because this is what I'm excited about. This is the impact I care about making. This is how I get to work with the people that I enjoy working with. But it really comes down to ambitions and how much do you want to push to grow?
That's awesome. And I just want to restate that point because it's so good, which is that what Danny said is that to grow a business is really hard. It's a lot of work. To maintain it is not that much work, if you want to maintain and do a holding pattern. And one of the beautiful things about being an education entrepreneur is that you really get to embody the core purpose or role of the entrepreneur, which is creating value. And in this case, we're transforming people's lives through processes, through support, through training. And your platform can do that for somebody, and maybe then it ripples out and affects another person. You have such an opportunity to really send out those ripples of positive change or beneficial impact out in the world through online education. And really, if entrepreneurs already successful, whether they're an education entrepreneur or not, and they're at the highest levels, and they're just killing it, living large and stuff like that, it's easy to think that can happen fast, but it does take time. It does take a lot of work. And, just really focusing on that value creation and transformation is really what it's all about, and helping people get results, not just knowledge. That's one of the key things out there. So I wanted to ask you another question, just based on your experience. If people are really, wanting to pursue their values and have a working life and helping others in alignment with their values and through their trainings, at what point, let's say on that timeline of 2 years, to replace what I was doing before. How much of that before I need team members? Like, at what point does the one person show fall away?
It depends a lot on how much you want to grow and how far you want to go. Yeah, it depends. I mean, you can certainly get to the point of quitting your job, for example, on your own. Doesn't mean you'll want to. You might not. You're definitely not going to grow much past, a few $100,000 a year working on your own, just because there's more that goes into it. But again, it depends a lot on your ambitions. Like, I started building a team early because I like working with people. I like that, we're stronger together than I would be on my own.
Yeah. I think I've heard that there's a lot of glamorization of the solopreneur out there, but maybe that just comes from an unhealthy thing in society where people don't like the work environment that they currently work in. So they think they want to be alone, but it's actually really cool to work with great people doing amazing things who have similar values.
Absolutely. It's the same kind of, positioning the win scenario against your current scenario. So if you're working with people you hate, then it's like, I don't want to have a boss. I don't want to have employees. I don't want to have anyone at all. But it's like, that's why not just have better people and work with them in a better way?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, as we talk about the aspirational lifestyle and you're thinking about the hammock with the laptop on the beach, being alone on the beach with everything fully automated and no relationships, working relationships around you, it may not be what you want. So spend a lot of time really thinking about that. And for a lot of people, I see, just thinking back to childhood is a good way to kind of rediscover like where things started to change, or where, responsibility perhaps overtook alignment with values and that kind of thing. So, well, Danny, where can people find out more about what you've got going on? I highly recommend everybody listening check out the Teach and Grow Rich book. And Danny, anything Danny's doing, whether he's launching something or just putting out content, it is incredible. It's deep. It's not topical. It's based on like real world results and case studies. And it's just such high quality and refreshing that I just want to acknowledge you for that, and encourage the listener to put Danny on the short list of people to watch, people to follow, and people to learn from. But where can people go to find out more?
Chris, thank you. You're very kind. Best place to find Teach and Grow Rich is Amazon, because that's where people buy books. Other than that, I mean, my website for my company is Mirasee, mirasee.com, and we periodically open the Course Builders Laboratory to new students. And if you're interested in that at a time when we're doing that, then I would love to have you join us. And Chris, you're going to be sharing a little bit of information about that as well, so everyone can watch their inboxes. And if you're watching this video, then you'll hear from Chris when that happens.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Danny. And to you out there listening, I just want to encourage you to spend a little time reflecting on your values, spend a little bit of time thinking about your ideal future kind of in great detail, and let that guide you and motivate you as you make the transition to becoming an education entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me, Chris. This has been awesome.
Thanks, Danny.